Well, folks, it's time for world politics, and apparently the House has a leader. So we're glad to know that the House of Representatives has a leader, and we're going to be interested to find out what folks have to see about this new leader, who is apparently an ally of Mr. Trump. But also, one of the things I was hearing was he doesn't have a lot of experience, and he's going to have to go out there and raise millions of dollars for the Republicans in the campaign and all along those lines, because it seems like he was a junior officer, and now he's going into the CEO desk and all in that space. So that was something that I was hearing from some of the kind of commentaries that I was listening to. So it'll be interesting to see if people think that this is a good thing or a bad thing. And of course, there are some interesting ideas that he have. I mentioned definitely the whole thing around Trump and what he thinks about the election and all in that space. I think he's also one of those folks that is a climate crisis denier. So he's thinking that this is something that might be a little bit overblown and all along those lines. So we'll see if folks agree or disagree with him. But that is some of the things that I was hearing about Mr. Johnson, who is apparently part of a very powerful Louisiana contingent, because there's a powerful Louisiana contingency that exists in the House now with both Mike Johnson and Steve Scalise. So that is definitely a powerful combination of Louisiana folks. And I know that earlier that one of our founders, Kim Calhoun, who's got some roots, not necessarily to Louisiana, but definitely to Texas, was thinking about that. And sometimes when I think about Louisiana, I think about some of the corruption that used to be a regular part of their political landscape. They definitely had some corruption on a regular part of their political landscape, as did Chicago. And there are a number of other places that have had some reputation in that lane. And I know sometimes when I think about my own state, North Carolina, there might have been some of that going on. And of course, we are a swing state, and there are a number of other swing states as well. So that is something that I was seeing is the nature of the swing states, and they might even determine the election and who wins the election and all in that space. I mean, we are the state, North Carolina is, that gave you both Terry Sanford, a very liberal governor, and Jesse Helms, a very liberal well, Terry Sanford was governor, and also he served in the Senate as well. And definitely Jesse Helms was in the Senate. So we definitely gave you a kind of a mixture of people and all along those lines. I also heard recently that Biden will not be on the primary in New Hampshire, because apparently there's some kind of going ons and some kind of like trying to figure out. So they want South Carolina, I think, to be the first state in terms of the Democratic primaries. So he will not be on the ballot in New Hampshire. I mean, he'll be on the ballot in the general elections, but in this one, he is bypassing being on the ballot because the Democrats want South Carolina to be the first state and all in that space. So, you know, these different states kind of maneuver in that way also. And of course, the politicians are paying attention to what's going on in Israel with the Israel-Hamas war. And I do know that the House of Representatives, right under Mike Johnson, did declare their support and their belief in what is going on in Israel. And there's some other things that are politically motivated as well that have to do with international politics, including something going on in a state that I just mentioned that is connected to Kim Calhoun, that being Texas, because definitely there is a Texas House, their House approved legislation that would expand the state's authority over the southern border. So that is something else that we are seeing as well. So definitely that is going on. And in the national news with things going on with our candidates, the special counsel is urging the courts to reimpose Trump gag order in election interference case. I think that's going to be real hard to do. Trump definitely enjoys getting out there and stating his case and making his thoughts known. And I don't know that he's going to adhere to a gag order, but Nick Palveda, who's with us, may have some thoughts around that, because he definitely has some legal background, even though this kind of law isn't necessarily his forte. And last but not least, two things that I was going to bring up, and we can talk about them during this show. The Georgia congressional map, they are saying, violates the Voting Rights Act, and that is what the court says. And the federal judges have ordered a new congressional and state legislative maps in Georgia. So they were saying that old one that they just put out, or the new one that they just put out, has violated those Voting Rights Act. So they've got to go back to the drawing board, as we like to say. And if you're wondering about some bad news for the Democrats, well, Representative Jamal Bowman, who was involved in that whole incident with the fire alarm, has pled guilty to misdemeanor for falsely pulling that fire alarm. We'll see if there's any other consequences in terms of his being in the Congress and all along those lines, or if that is where it will stay and all in that space. So, like I said, I'm going to bring in a possible person that could be a future president in the not too distant future, and all along those lines, he's definitely lining up his cabinet, lining up his people. I think he said that I might be running the campaign managing or doing one of those other jobs that he gave me, and all along those lines. But definitely, he's lining up people right here from Pod TV to run his campaign. But what is your thoughts about this new lovely situation that is going on now that we have a Speaker of the House? It is a gentleman from Louisiana. Like I said, I didn't watch a lot of the commentary, but the commentary I did hear was that he was a fresh face in the sense of not having a lot of experience, but then some people are saying that he might be learning on the fly and learning in the fire, as the old saying goes. So what is your thoughts about Mr. Johnson as Speaker of the House? I don't hear you. Hold on. I'm going to bring in other folks.
Can't hear you, Adam. You're supposed to be up to date on this stuff. And you're a young guy. You know about technology. You know? So
he's going to try to get his... Still do not hear you. We're going to try to...
Can't hear you.
Unmute your... look on your computer. Adam, look on your computer and see if you've got that muted.
It's called a computer.
Yeah, either that or he might have to go out and in, and we'll hear the future president's thoughts and all along those lines. And that might be some of the things that Mr. Johnson might be running to as well, because like I said, he's going to be learning it on the fly. Because one of the first things I heard, and I didn't watch a lot of the commentary, but one of the first things I heard was people were like, hey, he doesn't have a lot of experience in raising money or in doing a lot of other things as well. So he might be learning on the fly and all along.
How hard of a job can this be? Come on, Mark. I mean, the Speaker of the House, he's been there like for 4 terms. He should be able to figure it out. You know, you appoint people in certain positions, you get up and you slam the gavel. Come on. You know, it's not like he's got to do calculus or analytic geometry.
All he needs is a gavel.
He just needs a gavel. I mean,
I think he needs an axe.
Yeah, please. And then he needs to exhibit some leadership, which they just don't do in Congress. Well, from what I understand, he plans on doing it. You know, we have a budget that is not balanced. We have spending problems. We are deeply in debt right now. The United States government mortgaging the futures. Social Security goes bankrupt. Medicare goes bankrupt. I mean, we got a lot of issues. 10,000 people are going across the borders every day, you know? So what he really needs to do is grow up fast. I mean, the whole Congress has to grow up fast and start addressing these issues in a sensible basis. And if they don't know the answer, find somebody who does know the answer, which, by the way, is not Donald Trump. There are a lot of good experts out there, but please don't go to the bottom of the pile and look for it to a club. That's a hard card to play. You know, go with the experts that actually know this stuff and they're out there to help solve the problems that America faces. We have a lot of bright people. They just don't seem to gravitate to Washington, D.C. So with that, I'm wondering if Adam, does your computer work now?
We still don't hear Adam, so we're trying to figure out what's going on with Adam's computer and all along those lines. So Adam is trying to figure that out, and in that space, hey, one of the things I did see is that definitely he came out very strongly for Israel, this new Speaker of the House. So, but he is a fan, and I know you're not necessarily a fan of Mr. Trump. So it took them a number of weeks to finally figure out who their leader was going to be. But there is now a leader of the Republican Party. And by the way, one of the candidates, another candidate, I believe it was Perry Johnson, has dropped out, and he has pledged his support to Mr. Trump. So it does look like Mr. Trump is the front runner, and I know that Nick has predicted that he might even win in this next election and all in that space, but we've had somebody else drop out. So what is your thoughts about this whole situation with the House of Representatives from a viewpoint from Canada, and definitely having some other connections as well? So what's your thoughts?
Oh, thank you, Mark. My thoughts are that he's just as good as anybody. Let him enjoy his speakership. I don't know how does it really change American politics inside or outside of country. It remains to be seen. Hopefully we will. I have the question which I can't really figure out something here. Today, United States 100% are behind Israel, regardless what Israel does or doesn't do. It doesn't matter. It's 100% behind it. And that I just don't understand when it started, because several years ago, even like 50, 60 years ago, Jews couldn't even enjoy country clubs. They were banned from everywhere. And it was, if you remember, during the even shortly before Second World War, when there is a ship with hundreds of Jews trying to escape from Europe, they were turned down by the United States, and they went back to Europe, and most of them, of course, have perished in all these horrible Holocaust events or so on. So I just don't understand where that happened, that United States are so firmly behind Israel, while it has a great...
Well, Sasha, one of the things I understand, and maybe Nick can correct me, but Israel is very much seen as one of our strategic allies, and not just in the Middle East, but throughout Africa and the world. So I think that there has been some strategic alliances. There are some folks that would argue that whether it is the media or whether it is other institutions, that they have a very significant impact on our society. I've talked on this show before about lobbies, and definitely the NRA is a strong lobby. The pharmaceutical industry is a strong lobby. There were some that would argue that particularly the Israel community is a strong lobby as well. There are some that might say that it is more conservative, and the conservative side of the Israel community, because there's that whole conversation, and we can argue about it, whether it is an actual term or not, around nationalism and Zionism and all along those lines. But there are many people in the U.S. that feel that the Jewish population has strong influences on a number of elements of society. And like I said, if anybody else wants to counter that or bring up their thoughts around that, I've heard that argument for years.
You know, Mark, I think you have to look at the facts of the case. I mean, if you look what happened, the people were actually partying. You know, they're going to this rock band. They're living their normal lives. They're working in kibbutz. You know, and then all of a sudden, out of the blue, a bunch of people jump across the border with guns, and they just annihilate you. 14, thousands of people. You know, yeah,
I hear you now, Adam. We hear you loud and clear now, Adam.
Doesn't like stuff like that.
Yeah, but we can hear you now.
Adam,
we want to jump in on this discussion, but one of the things that I think everybody here throughout World Politics, World Edition, every other show we've had, has pretty much agreed that Hamas is a terrorist organization. But the point I was bringing to Sasha's question, because Sasha asked it, is the influence and the amount of people that are behind Israel, and I do not doubt that there are a lot of people behind Israel. Ironically, and I don't know if Sasha has any thoughts around this, there are people that are in other parts of the world, like the EU. I think there are a number of EU countries that are actually asking for Israel to pull the brakes and to not rush into the war as quickly as they are going into it and everything, because I definitely heard that, and I didn't get a chance to talk about that earlier today, that there are several EU leaders, the European Union, that are saying, we understand where you are. We definitely agree that Hamas did a terrorist act, but we don't want you to necessarily rush into there. And part of the rushing in is they are concerned about it becoming, one, an Afghanistan situation, and two, we don't know, and they don't know, because they even said that they don't know how deeply mined those tunnels are. So there are some concern, even in my understanding, from the Israeli population about what they may be running into, because we know what happened when we got into a guerrilla warfare several years ago back in Vietnam. Once that war lasted for a lot of times, longer than we expected, and there was a lot of casualties, and they were able to fight on their terms, and we don't know what their terms are in the sense of those tunnels that they built and the way that they mined those tunnels and everything. Am I wrong, Adam, in thinking that? Because that's one of the concerns that I've heard from people, is that they've been there for a while, meaning that Hamas, the terrorist organization, and they've got these tunnels, and we don't know what's in those tunnels, and neither do the Israelis.
Mark, thank you. I didn't ask you about tunnels. I asked completely different questions to which you did not answer. But maybe Adam can.
That's okay. I'll answer the question that Mark asked me initially, and then Sasha, you can have the floor. First, I want to go back to what you initially asked me about the new Speaker of the House. The Republicans have created a mess in the House of Representatives when they removed Kevin McCarthy. That was a mistake. And I think what they did was they finally had to vote on somebody. So they voted on somebody who is an ally of Trump, but really is probably going to aggressively move to get things done to bring some credibility back to the Republican Party. But I do think that at the end of the day, given Biden's record of inflation, not securing the border, high unemployment rates, instability abroad, that he is going to lose the election to Trump in 2024. Now, as far as the Israeli and Hamas crisis goes, I laid out on previous shows what the solution is. It's 3 parts. Number 1, we have to eradicate Hamas, however messy it's going to be. They need to be wiped off the face of the earth for the barbarism that they showed when they killed families, burned babies alive, raped women. They should be annihilated, and they should no longer exist. But the Palestinian
this is Hamas, not the Palestinians.
I'm referring to Hamas, but that's my second one. My second point is that Hamas is not the Palestinians. I do support a Palestinian state, provided that Hamas is wiped off the map. I also support recognition of Israel's right to exist and a robust Israeli state. They have to live together, and they should live together with equal dignity and equal protection of the law. But first order of business, Hamas has to go.
And before you get, I think everybody agrees with that Hamas needs to go. And if I misunderstood your question, Sasha, and if you want to restate it, because I thought I was answering your question because you were talking about the amount of support that Israel was getting. So I thought that I was answering your question, but maybe I misunderstood it and misconstrued what you were asking. But if you want to rephrase it, and if Adam wants to tackle that, I would gladly let him tackle it since I thought that I was answering what you asked. But if you want to rephrase the question, please do.
Yes, here is my question. Right now, U.S., and not only now, but in the last several years, well before the October 7th just happened, U.S. was 100% behind Israel in anything, whatever Israel would do, whether it's right or wrong or something, for the last, I would say, 50 years at least, but say 50 years. However, from history, we know that there is a huge history of anti-Semitism in United States. I'll start with the shortly before Second World War. There was a ship from Europe full of Jews trying to escape Holocaust, and they were turned down. U.S. wouldn't accept even one person. The ship went back to Europe, and all those people perished in the Holocaust. There were times when 50, 60 years ago, Jews would not be accepted even in the country clubs and any designated position of like CEO or president of the company or so on. They were barred 100%. They were like a second sort people. There were signs, no Jews or dogs allowed. So how from that, America, United States, became such a vocal and unconditional supporter of Israel? What's happened?
Well, greasing the palms. I'm sure that there was a lot of bribes in there.
What do you mean by bribes?
Just that I think that they bribed a lot of politicians over the years.
Is that right? Do you have any proof of that?
But a lot of times you don't have proof of those kind of things. You just have to wait it out. But
well, what is your source? You're talking about very important things. What you're saying is that Israelis or Jews or whoever bribes U.S.
So why do you think it is, Sasha? Why do you think they changed?
Not even a proof, just source that you heard it somewhere. Somebody just said, hey.
I'll tell you, it's funny.
Tell me about that.
So, Sasha, hold on a second. Well, I definitely want to hear from Adam as well, but I think I partially alluded to that when I said that there are, in my answer, and I hear more where you were going, because yes, there's been a rise in a lot of racism and a lot of things. There's even an organization that documents the racism that goes on in our society, including that against African Americans and the Jewish population. And there are a number of organizations that document that there has been a spike. And I think sometimes even when Jacoby's on, he talks about otherism and people that are willing to blame other people because they feel that they are to blame for whatever the injustice is, whether that's the Chinese and COVID, whether that's Arab population and this Middle East attack or a number of other things. So I do think that sometimes people blame the Jewish population for being in control of some major institutions or having some major influences, which is what I think Kim was alluding to and everything.
Well, if I could say one thing, Sasha, I have to be honest with you. I spoke to my mother about 10 minutes before I got on the show, and she told me to give a message to you that you are now her number one person on the show, and that I have fallen out of favor with her, and she agrees with everything that you say. So I'm going to challenge you a bit on what you said. In the United States right now, anti-Semitism is not the biggest problem. Anti-whiteness is a huge problem. Wokeness is a problem. Racial division is a problem. The Democratic Party exploiting African Americans is a problem. Okay. Identity politics is a problem. Okay. People dividing themselves along racial, ethnic lines based on single issues. College campuses going so woke that no diverse perspectives are welcomed. This country is destroying itself from the inside out. And when it comes to Israel and Palestine, we have to consider, number one, how do we respond to the barbarism that Hamas showed? We eliminate them. But at the end of the day, we need a Palestinian state, and we need Israel's right to exist recognized, because they have to coexist. And the third thing is, we have to make sure that Russia is protected from NATO, and we have to make sure that its peacekeeping operation in Ukraine is a success.
Yeah, and I'm just saying,
protect Russia from NATO, Ukraine.
NATO is a disgrace, and they should be wiped off the map just like Hamas, because NATO has created this situation in Russia along with the United States.
Adam, I got two quick questions for you.
Just what can be accounted for.
And as far as climate change goes, climate change is exaggerated, just like COVID deaths were exaggerated. We need to have balance and moderation in our politics. Democrats and Republicans who respect each other and who can meet in the middle and focus on helping the American people, okay, not on political power.
Yeah, Adam, I got two quick questions for you based on things that I've heard, and one that is based on something I was just talking about earlier. But most people in society can identify with where they exactly came from. If you're Italian American, you know you're Italian American. If you're Jewish American, you know you're Jewish American. I can say that because my dad's other half, his significant other, is a Jewish American. I can go down the list, but we don't have to go down the list. The African American population, because of the history of slavery, not necessarily so. I couldn't tell you if I was from, because of my complexion, and probably from one of the northern African countries, but I can tell you that for sure. I might be from Sudan for all I know in terms of my ancestry and all along those lines. But that is something that is a concern that many African Americans have, and that's why there was even the term African American. And then there's the whole conversation around whether we identify and go into alliance with Africa, because there's the whole conversation around that between the relationship between African Americans and Africans.
What's the question?
So here is the PAC contributions from pro-Israel. As you can see, it's split down the middle almost between Democrats and Republicans, so they cover their butts either way. So, there's a lot of donations that come in to be pro-Israel, and it has been going on for a long time. They're paid to support Israel. So
you put $5.5 million to 26 PACs. This is laughable. It's a laughable. Go to figure out how much money Qatar contributes to U.S. universities. And
Qatar is a beautiful country.
Qatar is a fantastic country, and they do contribute to American universities. And American universities are bringing up all this indoctrinated, aggressive, and others who are becoming future of United States of America.
I don't care who donates for the university.
Similar to Qatar, they are formulating the future of United States electorate.
You asked if there was proof for political donations, and that's what I don't care about university donations.
This doesn't
care about the political donations.
We can move on to something else and everything. Hey, hold on a second.
Hold
on a second. We can get into something else as well.
Nothing. You know what? It seems to me that the Israeli organizations are very cheap, because for both Republicans and Democrats, 26 PACs, they gave them a little change, $5 million. Oh my God, what a disgusting
That's
figure.
just only what we can account
That's
for.
the-
That
Well,
has
what
nothing to do with
Kimberly,
what we
what
account for.
Kimberly's statistics shows
Yeah.
is that money controls the electoral and political process, and
And
that's
it
because of the
is.
Supreme Court's decision in Citizen United and McCutcheon versus FEC. It's not a Jewish problem. It's a elitist and wealth problem,
Thank you.
where the wealthy are the ones who control the elections. Now, to Sasha's point about universities, he's entirely right. A conservative white male cannot have a voice today at Harvard or Yale, okay? Because people are so focused.
Hold on a second, Adam.
Well-
the young Republicans are very much popular on many campuses. I know that for a fact.
I don't agree with that, because I see the demographics at universities. They are overwhelmingly liberal, and they do not welcome alternative views, whether they're conservative or moderate, and they discriminate against conservatives in the hiring process. And this goes to a broader problem, which is the common values that used to unite people of different races and economic classes have eroded. And that's why diversity is no longer a good thing in the United States, because we no longer share a set of common values based on our Constitution, based on liberty, based on respect for differing viewpoints. Instead, you have a progressive agenda that shuts out ideas, that's intolerant in the name of tolerance, that's exclusionary in the name of inclusion, and that's inequitable in the name of equity. It's a shame. It's corrupting our youth. And you see it on campuses all over the country, where these people are tearing down signs of people who have been killed in Israel and celebrating Hamas for what has been the most disgusting attack I've seen in my lifetime.
Adam,
No,
may I add
definitely.
something to it? I just read and heard of the Hoover lecture from Goodfellas. And there was a case just happened in a few days ago in Stanford University.
Yes.
The professor asked, are there any Jewish kids in class? There were a handful. Raise your hands. They raise their hands. Now take all your belongings, everything, leave where it is, and just come to me. Well, they came. Now go to the corner and stay there. So they were staying there for several minutes or so. And he says, okay, now you understand how Palestinians feel about Israelis. Okay? How do you think your lecturer in university, how do you think what should happen to this professor, so-called professor?
I think that professors who do not welcome diverse perspectives and who focus on ideology rather than facts should not be professors. And it's not just an anti-Semitism problem. Look at what's going on our campuses today. Campuses have safe spaces. They have cry closets for young people who struggle to cope with their emotions. They shout away speakers like a federal judge at Stanford or a constitutional law scholar at NYU because they don't like their views. You want to talk about fascism? Well, it's alive and well on our campuses. Yes, it includes anti-Semitism, but it also includes anti-whiteness, anti-conservatism, and anti-marketplace of ideas. And that's why our youth are going to be ignorant. They're not going to be valuable citizens or informed citizens. And that is the biggest threat to our democracy, not from outside, but from within.
100%.
Thank
Well,
you,
hold
but
on a
you know,
second, hold
think
on a
about
second,
this.
hold
We're
on a
not
second.
allowed to do pro anything. We can't do pro white or pro black, but we can do anti anything. That our country is a little backwards.
Anti-racism and pro-diversity, but diversity of ideas, not just race. I don't look at people as black, white, gay, straight, or transgender. I look at them as complex people who I judge based on what they do, not on who they are.
Well,
And
and
we
what they
need to
need.
share common values where we respect everybody's personal autonomy and liberty on an equal basis.
Well, you know, I
Hold on a
didn't
second.
see that at Northeastern University at all. But of course, I was teaching graduate tax. I hate to say it, Adam, we actually had to learn something in our school. And we actually
Good for you. That's a good thing.
teach something that's useful in our school. So all these issues that you described were never brought up. In other words, they frankly did not exist. I didn't have any graduate tax students say, "Oh, I'm part of a woke tax agenda." Okay, that's not a conversation.
Go to Northeastern Law School right now, and you will see wokeness manifest in all of its ugly tentacles.
Well, I mean, the thing is,
Hold on a second, Adam. Just really quickly, are you going to?
and not grind yourself into oblivion when there's a lot of problems that need to be solved. And that's one reason I think that people need to take a decision science class, because there is a science behind decision making. And you can see that obviously our higher education is failing that. And lower education, like our education system that we're looking at K through 12, we're not even in the top 25. So
we've been falling.
You want to know why, Nick? Because I'll tell you why. Because we are coddling the American mind with safe spaces, microaggressions, people feeling unsafe. We're not teaching them how to live in the real world. We're not teaching them how to tolerate all alternative ideas. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is a code word for homogenous thought, exclusivity, and discrimination.
Well, Adam, I don't know about. I know that both Marquette and Duke, which I'm around the corner from, and everything. There are usually diverse views. I've seen some very conservative professors. I've seen some very liberal professors, and yes, they do sometimes bring their biases into their education lanes. And I don't know that that is always the fairest thing to do. But I've seen it from both sides. I've seen it from both conservatives and
both
liberals.
sides are wrong.
And I've definitely seen some strong viewpoints, and I've even seen some strong young Republicans, just like I've seen some strong young Democrats and everything else. So I don't know that it is one side that is doing this. And by the way, Sasha, you'll be glad to know that lecturer that you were talking about, and that was like about a week and a half ago, Sanford did suspend that lecturer pending investigation. So it might be getting rid of that job and everything eventually.
Very important. His status at the university. Was he a lecturer, an adjunct professor, an assistant, associate, or a full tenured professor? Or do you know?
I don't know. I'd have to look that up and find out.
Because unfortunately, as you know, Adam, your stupid college system is very elitist and very they're basically elitist. I mean, it's disgusting. It's worse than chess players, Sasha. You have to be you have like a totem pole that you go up and down from like assistant professor to associate professor.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole. Yeah, that's
Nick, let's talk about not just the professors.
I mean,
let's talk about the students.
Our education system should be dumped.
Yeah, and I'll tell you why. Because we're not only just coddling students, we're dumbing down standards. Oregon, a local school board in Oregon just voted to do away with assessments because they had a disproportionate impact on marginalized communities. The Loudoun County School District in Virginia, do I need to even go there? Dumbing down standards and coddling students is preparing them for failure. It's also preparing this country for failure, while also fomenting division on the basis of race and an identity politics that's destroying us from within. That's the threat, not Russia, not China. The threat to democracy is right at our doorstep.
I agree with you, Adam. We have dumbed down our standards way too far. We've
I've worked for the testing company, so I definitely agree with you on that, because there have been.
And one of the things that has caught my attention in the political world right now that's going on is net neutrality. And they're voting on that as well, which I think is a very, very important bill that we need to be paying attention to. And we do need to regulate the internet so that we can get more fair internet to the people who need it for education reasons. But you're right. We dumb down the standards to everything, right down to the tools we own. And we allow it to happen. We allow the resources to be dumbing down.
And when I'm president of the United States, I am going to be a president in the tradition of John F. Kennedy, where you ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. And you hold people to high standards. You teach people to be strong and tough, and you teach them how to cope with their emotions and to hold themselves to standards that are going to make us successful domestically and strong internationally.
Hey, Adam, since you're running for president and everything, I was going to ask about two parts of the world that are politically oriented. I mentioned them on world politics earlier, but since you're running for president, what are you going to do when there is another major Asian country that is impacting politics? I mentioned what on the World Edition, what India did in the sense of dealing with a certain terrorist organization there in, or terrorists there in, or certain friend, a different group, a different part of their religious group in Canada. I believe it was the one of the religious groups that they were involved in that space, and now they are having a case with Qatar. Y'all talked about Qatar earlier, and apparently Qatar has put some Indians to death, and now India has to figure out how they're going to make sure that that doesn't happen and everything. So India is flexing some muscle in the world. So what, as president, are you going to do with India? Because India apparently is flexing some of its own muscles as well.
Well, the first thing I'm going to say is that my foreign policy is not going to be guided by an inconsistent moral standard. It's going to be guided by what is in the self-interest of the United States and what is going to further us and secure us economically and make sure that we remain a superpower. And that will be the guiding principle. And that was the guiding principle under Bush. It was the guiding principle under Clinton. I'm also going to stay out of international conflicts that don't implicate our interests because it is a waste of time. It is a waste of resources. And I'm going to focus on, number one, building a strong military here and domestically building a very powerful economy and middle class. And foreign policy is going to be based on how does it serve the United States alone.
Now, what about your foreign policy in your backyard? Because I mentioned at the beginning about Texas and what they're doing in terms of the border and everything. And there are a lot of folks that are arguing that there are a number of elements, some coming for work, some coming for illicit and illegal reasons from our southern borders. But I also understand there's some great countries to go visit in the southern border, like Costa Rica and others. So what are you going to do about the foreign policy of those that are adjacent to us?
In terms of border security, well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. For those people who are in the United States illegally and who have not committed a violent felony or a serious felony, I'm going to give them amnesty and a pathway to citizenship because I'm not going to break up families and deport them, but I am going to secure the border. I am going to put more border patrol. I am going to secure that border and continue building that wall because you can't give amnesty here if you're going to have a porous border there. You have to have both. We have to have compassion coupled with good policy.
Yeah,
Adam, I would like to know your opinion on, since United States are very divided now, there is no common ground between half of the countries where people cannot put together even like $400 if they need, and the other half that are well-to-do people, multimillionaires and others. What do you think about mandatory military service? In many countries, there is a mandatory military service. It puts people together. It doesn't matter whether it's a year long or 2 years long, it doesn't matter. But it puts people of different background, as long as they are American. It puts them together. They are living together. They're working together. It's a source of uniting people and more, in my opinion, than anything else. I was in mandatory military service when I was still in Soviet Union. I spent 2 years there. There are merits of that. Not that Soviet Union military service is anything to be proud of, but the idea itself. And I think in the United States, I can't think of anything else what can unite country more than this. What do you think?
I am 100% for mandatory military service. And that's going to have a lot of benefits. Number one, it's going to teach people to be patriotic about their country and to value their country, to fight for their country. Number two, it's going to put diverse populations together that are going to learn to get along under the common value of representing and respecting the United States of America. Now, you talk about Russia. Okay, well, let's compare Russia's young people to the young people in the United States. I will guarantee you that they are more intelligent, more cultured, more nationalistic than the United States, young people in the United States. You want to know why? Because young people in the United States have no values. They have no sense of a collective identity based on their country's values of liberty, autonomy, security, and self-determination. So mandatory military service will teach that and teach us how to truly exist in a diverse culture.
Agree.
And that's why I should be president, because my ideas will actually unite this country.
Because you actually have ideas. See, the real problem is
that's the difference.
The two bimbos that are running have no ideas.
And I can win. I can win New Jersey. I can win Florida. I can win the Rust Belt.
Well, according to the survey we did, anybody can win if they can get on the ballot. I mean, that's the
Or
real
if
thing.
they can just get out there and get some media attention, that's the ones who win.
Because people are just tired. I mean, Trump. Okay, let's forget it. This guy is an old hack. Biden, he's just old. I mean, so
Yeah, how come I'm not on the debate stage with the Republicans? Why am I not there? Why are some of these clowns on the debate stage who aren't saying anything that has any chance of ever helping people? The purpose of a public servant, and especially a president, is to do something that impacts the lives of the people.
But see these ideas are things that should be brought up. One thing, this mandatory military service. Okay, one thing it may stop is this huge amount of student loans that are out there. In other words, because people when they're 18, rather than going to college to get a college education, so they get a woke agenda where they get whatever garbage that is being dished out by the hierarchy of colleges, they go into the military service. That gives them a couple of years to grow up and start figuring out that these loans are a bad idea. They need that extra time.
Well, not everybody can go into the military, so you can, or you can put, do different branches and stuff like that. But you can do military or public service of some kind.
Yeah. It has a lot of benefits. It cuts down on our national debt because we're using cheap labor. So yeah. I mean, the thing is, if you're looking at it from an overall standpoint, it has a lot of benefits, very little detriments. We also can improve our defenses because the Star Wars concept is this Patriot missile system, defense system actually works. We need to install something like that in the United States against these stupid Russians that have atomic weapons. And I heard, Sasha, maybe on your show tomorrow, that Putin did have a heart attack and he's in serious condition. In other words, he's not going to outlive the war.
Well, we extend our well wishes to Mr. Putin.
In many ways, God can prevail. The other thing I want to point out, Adam, when you're talking about why aren't you on that stage, or why isn't anyone of any value on that stage? And it's because in America, we have learned to be guided by fear and pointing blame, and that's who wins. And if you look at Trump, that's what he does in every one of his speeches. He utilizes fear. And then he points blame. He does not give a solution ever, 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 ever. And I think we need somebody who gives solutions. I truly believe you should run on the ticket of no labels. You should go to with David.
Go to David Walker and promote yourself. Well, I'll go to David Walker. See Mary Monday.
Get
on the no labels ticket because they're probably going to bring somebody on because it looks like it's going to be a dump. And a Trump who's horrible and Biden.
I want to have an opportunity. I want to have an opportunity to have a conversation with the American people. I want to have the opportunity to go to all 50 states and to share my ideas. You guys often express surprise when I talk about Russia. I'm going to tell you why I talk about Russia. Because when you look at the young people in Russia, there are certain distinct characteristics that our young people lack. Number one, young people love Russia. Number two, they're smart and very mature. Number three, they're very cosmopolitan. They're knowledgeable, okay? And they have strong constitutions and characters. Here, we have a woke agenda that is dumbing down our students, coddling our students, and fomenting division on the basis of race, and is the exact antithesis of the kind of collective unity that we need for security here.
Adam, very quick question to you. Do you think the same attributes that you apply to Russians, does the same applies to Ukrainians?
I am not prepared to answer that because I do not know. I assume the answer is probably yes.
Yeah.
Okay. It makes sense.
Yeah, the thing is, what you're bringing back to the point is, Adam, is that, and I think that also deals with mandatory military services, that they have a sense of country, and we don't have a sense of country in the United States of America, which is really horrible. One time when I discovered I was American, it was the first time when I went overseas to go to school. I went to Oxford University, and then I went to France. By the way, Oxford, since they speak English, you still don't get it. When you go to France, you start getting you are an American. They don't speak your language. They don't like you. They leave you homeless in the streets of Paris, which I was. And they just, it's like this. They just don't.
Because they think Americans are fat, dumb, and stupid.
Yeah, they do. They think they're fat, dumb, and stupid. Yeah. So the thing is, Americans,
That's very
unfortunately, because we're so insular here, don't even understand that people in China hate us. Not all the people in China, but a lot of them, what they see is America is in their way to become to their manifest destiny, which is China to rule the world, not the United States of America.
Well, they're
And
taught
I just
that
don't
from
know.
the moment they're born, Nick. And I agree with you. When I was in Colombia, I was so impressed with the pride that they take in their country and how they unite together and how beautiful they keep it and work hard at maintaining. And they just really respect each other over there as opposed, and it was almost depressing coming back to the United States because there was just so much going on here. I mean, look, another mass murder last night.
And we don't learn. I mean, the thing is,
We don't.
the European Union is today, because of the lack of wars, is a much nicer place to live than the United States. Frankly, Canada is a much nicer place to live than the United States. And we're denigrating ourselves into a third world nation, and piling on this national debt will not help us, because that's every businessman knows that's your dry powder is cash in the bank. Well, we not only do not have cash in the bank, we have a huge debt sitting out there dragging us down, and Congress is ignoring it. So David Walker is one of the few people who say, guys, you've got to wake up. You cannot put your government in such a horrible position. And we're going to see in the next month or two, don't be surprised if you see a government shut down. Don't be surprised if you see the markets all turn around and go south. We're on a brink.
When I am the president of the United States, the first two things I'm going to do, we are going to cut spending and we're going to raise taxes on the wealthy.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, the wealthy, I can tell you this, they don't want to pay taxes. But if you told them we're going to allocate these taxes to pay down the national debt, they would actually be interested in that.
We're going to cut spending. We have to cut spending.
They are very concerned. Remember, and we're going to be going over this in Economics Monday. Remember the stats. 10% of our population own 70% of all the assets in the United States. 10%. The bottom 50% own 2.5. The bottom 70% can't get a hold of $1,000. So if you look at the vast majority, and these people vote, but obviously they don't vote their economic interests, and they don't even know what economic interest is. 70% of our society can't get a hold of $1,000, yet the top 10% have 70% of all the assets, literally trillions of dollars. So we have a very skewed economic system in the United States.
Well, they got it in the PPP loans that Trump gave to everyone. They got all the extra billions from the PPP loans, and that's why we are in debt. Nobody ever looks at that, but that was billions of dollars never coming back.
But unless we cut spending,
we're
finished. And we have to reform entitlements. We have to reform Social Security.
But you also have
Adam, hold on a second. Speaking
of the middle class,
speaking of that, we actually
the middle class supports the rich and the poor. We're in the middle.
The middle class is evaporating.
But when you put the brakes on the middle class, like you have been doing, and you're clenching down on the middle class so that they can't spend money, and so that they can't get a loan, then you have put the brakes on this country. And the rich are not going to have anyone to bleed out, because that's who they bleed out, is the middle class.
Well, you're right about that. We really don't even have a middle class anymore, because it's so difficult to even afford a home or to.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You have rich and poverty now. You've stretched the middle class.
You have to raise taxes on the rich, cut them on the middle class, and cut spending. If you don't cut spending, you're not going to solve any problems.
Well, and David says this all the time, and I think you and David need to get together and work this out, because I was listening to the radio today and to more of a Republican station than, more of a far right. But interesting to me is they were even saying that the majority of the people are starting to lean liberal, into a no label program, that they don't want either one, that they want somebody that's neither party. Almost 40% are leaning that way. So that's a high level.
Maybe I'll be the first president of the United States who's not a Republican or a Democrat. And I think the people would be better off for it.
I think that people would be way better off, and a much younger president. One of the things
Sasha will be my foreign policy advisor.
well,
And
we
of
need
course,
that.
He's very, very intelligent.
And historically, he knows he knows history better than anyone. So
Adam, I think you have to study what's happened with the campaign of Ross Perot. He was a very successful businessman. He was a billionaire. He's got actually 22% from nowhere. So I think his example it's brilliant. It's a fantastic achievement. It didn't help him to become a president, but he showed what a intelligent campaign with a little bit of money, of course. He had donations of all kinds. I think he did spectacularly well. The only thing is, probably it helped Clinton more than Bush Sr., it appears to me. But Adam, there is one thing when you were talking earlier about Trump. The problem of Trump is that he's being distracted by lawsuits, by campaign, by all kinds of things. Now that all of his co-defendants are pleading deals, guilty, and all kind of deals with prosecutors or so on. Actually, Trump is already losing his opportunity to make a deal simply because nobody needs Trump's deal anymore. When they get all his close people to deal with them, and they will supply material against him. Maybe if rather sooner than later, Trump will serve a little bit of a jail term. He will clear up his mind. He will not be distracted by anything. He will have 3 meals a day, and he will really think how to rule the country, what messages to bring. And after that, he could become a brilliant president.
I think running it from jail, right?
Yeah.
It might be safer in jail than he is in out on the streets nowadays.
There was a book that
you can't even go to a bowling alley anymore without getting shot. So at least not in the United States.
Very tragic.
There was a book called
very
Best and the Brightest. I don't have it back here, but I don't know if you read it. It was David Halberstam. The Best and the Brightest was a book about John F. Kennedy and his mission to become president. But his thought was to not be the person who's the dictator of the U.S., but to find the best and the brightest people and put them in positions so that they would advise him on certain issues. Now, the sad part, when Trump got elected, and I started seeing he was bringing in people that I thought were going to be the best and the brightest, but then he completely fired them, and he turned the whole place into a circus. And I was going like, if you first of all, you have to find the best and the brightest, and Halberstam is really good. Then you have to bring them in, because the United States does have a very deep and good talent pool. The problem is they don't get involved in politics, and part of the reason they don't do it is we have a systemic political problem. It's probably as bad as your education system.
The other problem is money. I mean, most of the people who get to where they're going is money.
Also, it's a club, and you're not invited. I mean,
think I'll go to Israel and get some money for Adam.
Well, look,
considering the fact they write those checks for $5 million.
$5 million. There you go.
Well,
yeah, but it's been divided between Democrats and Republicans.
Right down the middle.
There is no money for a third party candidate, unfortunately.
I think
I'll change that. I'll change it.
One thing we need to recognize is that when it comes to a good leader and a president of the United States, that person has to have the intangible qualities, the qualities you can't teach, that inspire people, that make people proud of their country, that kind of Elvis Presley type quality, where that you feel that the person is connected to you, you believe in them, they inspire you, they inspire hope. Okay, without that, it doesn't matter as much what you do. It does matter who you are. And I think I can do that because I think I have a diverse background, and I think I have the kind of humility that would actually benefit people at a time when division is overtaking us and unity is nowhere to be found. John F. Kennedy had that quality, and John F. Kennedy would have been one of the best presidents ever had he lived.
Adam,
I
you
agree.
see the problem, what I studied from the history of the world and which nation and leaders became the most successful ones. There are two quality required to be present in large quantities. And I've said it many times. It's a passion and it's a curiosity. Of course, with the leadership as today, with 150 years old Biden, there is no passion, there is no curiosity. He's a decent man from what I can say, but without passion, without curiosity, you cannot lead. You cannot become anything. So if you go in the history of the world and you can see which countries becoming rulers of the world at different times, the leaders of these countries have both passion and curiosity. Today, United States lacks both. Okay, so he sent two carrier groups to Israel, and then what? They're like sitting ducks. They're waiting for Iran or Russia or somebody else just start hitting them, and there is nothing they can do about that. So what kind of action is that? Maybe it's a psychological warfare, perhaps, but they're already there for 2 weeks. There will be third week and fourth week. And then what? Okay, first week was useful. Okay, it's very impressive. Okay, second week, they're still there. The third week, nobody talks about it anymore. It doesn't make any sense what's happening. So there's no declared foreign policy. Okay, remember Ronald Reagan. He said that Soviet Union is evil empire. He just pronounced it. And then he started taking actions. And guess what? A few years later, there was no longer Soviet Union. Period. Done. So today, United States does not declare anything anywhere. It's kind of, oh, Ukraine, maybe we will help, maybe we will not. Okay, we'll help, but not everything what they need. We'll just give it piecemeal. 1 month we'll do this, and maybe 3 months that, but not that much. No, we'll stop right here. Okay. Oh, next year we'll do a little bit of this or that, or so on. So this is all about even Israel. They don't take a stand. They're saying something, they're backtracked, and it's not going anywhere. There is no passion, there is no curiosity. There is really a vacuum in U.S. foreign policy.
Well, Reagan had one
the
of the
White House has been used as a retirement home, if you ask me. It's an old folks' home. We need to change that a little bit and spice it up and get some young people in there because
Adam, are you old enough
look
to
at
run?
everybody there. They're all going 1 foot in the grave.
What'd you say, Nick?
Are you old enough to run for this office? I mean, you have to be a certain
I know
age.
I don't look 47, and that's a good thing, but I am 47. And I'm going to bring two things to the White House that Reagan did. Number one, moral clarity, and number two, decisiveness. The American people need to know what we're doing and why we're doing it. And we're doing it because we have moral clarity and we have decisiveness. What you see with Joe Biden is neither. What you saw with George W. Bush was neither. People need to be led, but to be led, they need to be inspired, and they need to be united.
Adam, in any case, please hurry up, because even in 4 or 5 years, you will become a president. Your friend Putin will not be alive. You will not be able to sign a peace.
I'll work with Russia and I'll work with any foreign power, but only to serve American interests and to make sure that the world is actually safer and less divided.
We do.
And by the way, they know y'all are winding down, but they did say that he is very sick. They're very sick and all along those lines. So they did say that Mr. Putin had a attack, I think it was earlier today. And so he might not be around that much longer, as Sasha said.
I send my well wishes to Mr. Putin. He's in our thoughts and prayers.
And the other thing I was going to mention, we can get that on the next World Politics. I heard y'all talking about home ownership, and I was actually watching a film yesterday that was just about that, because they were talking about, it's called Silver Dollar Road, but it was some folks in rural North Carolina who basically had their land hijacked and all in that space. So definitely that is something that people talk about.
One question about Putin. Is his backup, the person who would replace him, would they be worse than what he is?
What do you mean?
I would
work?
say stay tuned to the great show.
So maybe we need to
Ukraine,
talk
Russia,
about that next
and
week.
We'll know more. But in the meantime, we're out of time, so we better bid everybody goodbye, and we'll see you.
And at
Tuesday.
6 o'clock, Melba Moore will be on Coco McMillan show. So Melba
Yeah,
Moore
she's
will be
going on
tuning in.
Get ready for Ivan the Terrible or Stalin, if it will come to that.
До свидания.
До
До
свидания.
свидания.
That's it.